How good were we today? So good today, right from start to finish.
Welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses. And, well, Calum, you didn't quite get the 0-0 you sarcastically hoped for when you had to prepare for this episode, but prepare you did, because in a first, you've actually written the notes for this episode, so maybe we have to apologise a little bit in advance.
Oh yeah, this is unprecedented times. I am more nervous than I ever usually am, given the fact it's my memory we're relying on. But I think I did an okay job. I'm sure, if not, we will be politely reminded in the comments down below and on Twitter at @RTG_podcast.
Yeah, and Instagram, rtg.podcast as well, if you don't follow us on either of those. But you did get the 5 goals you predicted as well. You did suggest we might win 3-2, and you expected goals. Goals is what we're getting at Pittodrie just now, because once again, 5 goals in a game at Pittodrie. That's every home game so far this season that has had that. And thanks to Kevin Blanchard for kindly pointing out that is the second 4-1 home win I have missed this season, and kindly asking me to stay away from Pittodrie if that's what's going to keep occurring. But nice as well, though, that Calum, this win, we spoke about it last week, about we wanted a good performance and maybe not to be affected by 10 men. And from all accounts that I read on Saturday evening after, touring London, was that we did get both goals and a solid performance.
Yeah, absolutely. To be fair, would have taken an absolute slog of a 1-0 win, but in order to set us up for this month after the international break, after a sort of tough couple of games prior to international break, it would have been nice to get a performance to go with the result as well, and that we did, thankfully. It was a very, very interesting one, given McInnes returning back to Pittodrie, the team lines that got released, which we'll come on to, but thankfully everyone's pulling in the right direction, on the same page, and got the result, but not a clean sheet.
Not a clean sheet, but we can't have everything perfect. But also a record Dons Day Out attendance. RDS was a sellout at the weekend. So again, that's something we spoke about last week, about being able to put in a performance that maybe encourages these people back. And I think the attendance was 16,348, if I recall correctly. And I think that's our highest home attendance of the season as well. So it's fantastic to see that as well. And with 15 home goals already at Pittodrie, that's just one less than last season. So you're certainly getting value for money if you're rocking up to see the Dons at home this season.
Absolutely. Yep. Thoroughly enjoyed myself, other than the pie situation. Half an hour had to wait to get a pie. Disaster. The South Stand is not doing well on that front as of yet. But hopefully that statistic that you pulled out is correct, because it's been a weird number to remember otherwise. And I was very impressed. The Dick Donalds doing their sort of standard Dons Day Out Aberdeen, which I'm glad has not been lost through the ages. And hopefully they'll return a very good performance, some exciting football. And it was very entertaining. Yeah, you missed a real show, and only to see your NFL hand-egg team lose. So
yeah, thanks. And double doink the last kick of the game. But did you see my catch on the Saturday that I sent you? I mean, they could have done with me. It was actually really sore, but really good fun for anybody that does enjoy American football. I strongly advise taking a trip to one of the London games. Really, really good weekend. Really well run, really well organised as well. But yeah, busy weekend. Obviously, as we said, missed the game, but you have come prepared. Thankfully, just home for about 4 hours, and you've already organised everything for recording tonight. So we'll get stuck into it, because there is a lot to digest in this episode as we look back at the weekend's win, take a look towards the weekend's trip to Tannadice, as what's set to be yet another sellout away end, go to back the Dons. And also, Calum, we've got some signing news. As just before my flight, young Aaron Reid has been announced as Aberdeen's latest signing, joining the club officially in January after being released from the academy a few years ago. So we'll get into that a little bit as well as we get on with the show. But as usual, when we look back at the weekend's game, Calum, we'll start with the team lines. So you've given me a full rundown, because I think I missed a couple of these in the pre-match tweet during my walk around London. So Ross McCrory, as was widely expected, I think it's safe to say, did go back into left centre back in place of the suspended Liam Scales. In doing so, Matty Kennedy came in, and you've got him down as playing in centre mid alongside Yilwa Ramadani and Vicente Bazawin. Who took them out of their fantasy team? I did, after your advice.
I think I maybe left Bazawin in, so I've screwed you over there, really.
Yeah, well, the worst thing was I left him in one league, but I took him out with the Red Tinted Glasses league. So
wow, yeah. Funny how these things work out. Sabotaged.
Yeah, and probably the biggest surprise for me was Duke going on the bench, and very good to see you've done some research after 3-3 with the little seen Marley Watkins coming in from the cold to start the game. What was your initial thoughts on reading the team lines?
I was shocked, to say the least. I had a look at it. I thought, right, so we've got Ramadan. He's the only centre mid then. Prior, we'd sort of mentioned that maybe we'd like to have seen Jack Milne, given the way things worked out. Jim Goodwin clearly knows better than both of us. Who'd have thought it? And it worked out okay. I was a bit concerned about who was going to be in the middle of the park. I thought maybe Hayes would maybe tuck in there, sort of a workhorse alongside Ramadani. Maybe that would work better. But it seemed to be sort of Ramadani at that base, holding the midfield, certainly for the most part anyway, with then Kennedy and Bazawin as creative sparks, comfortable on the ball, on the turn, and can make things happen. So in hindsight, worked perfectly. Beforehand, I was quite concerned and very, very confused by it all. And certainly by the exclusion of Duke. As I said, 3-3 for Duke, dropped to the bench. Dropped maybe harsh, I suppose, but back to his usual role of being impact sub. And I was very surprised for Marley Watkins' inclusion. Barely seen him really so far in the league season. Came in, performed pretty well, I thought. I think Brune mentioned his touch was a little bit suspect at times. I'll put that one down to rust. But he was silky as ever, I thought, and put in a shift. And it was basically exactly what you expect from Marley Watkins. He didn't look sort of out of shape or anything like that. And if he can still come in and deliver those performances, he's a player that we sort of earmarked at times as maybe he's going to go out the door, but if he can still deliver like that, all for it. And whatever Jim Goodwin had planned before the game absolutely worked.
Yeah, and I think I finally learned a few seasons ago not to criticise or go too crazy at the team news pre-match, because often it comes back to bite you, which I think will have done in the case of a few people pre-match on Saturday. But encouraging to hear that performance of Marley Watkins, maybe just putting down to, a player that's just got on with the job in training, put his head down, knuckled down and worked hard. And when given that opportunity, which he was on Saturday, tried to stake a claim for, the trip coming up at the weekend. Matty Kennedy as well, turning in a Sergio Busquets performance, to quote the man himself, and probably the hardest to understand interview you'll ever hear on Red TV. What did you make of his performance going into that centre of midfield?
His performance in centre midfield a lot better than the interview. I'll say that much. I was surprisingly impressed. As I said, I thought it would be Johnny Hayes that would be in there with maybe Bazawin ahead of himself and Ramadani. Didn't expect it to be Matty Kennedy at all. And when I realised that was happening, I was a little bit concerned. But he was awarded man of the match, obviously, and probably deservedly so, in a position that's quite unfamiliar. And Kilmarnock, with Alan Power in there, for example, might not be an easy shift in there. Alan Power particularly physical later on in the game as well. I was really impressed with Matty Kennedy, and it's really bizarre because I could not have imagined me seeing this sort of 6 months ago. I didn't even think he was going to be around at Pittodrie at this point, and he's put in a decent shift in centre midfield when we need it. Was good on the ball, fantastic. Ramadani's feeding it into him. He's able to turn and try and make things happen. With him and Bazawin in support of Watkins, Hayes, and Miovski, I thought it actually worked really well. I think in a game at home against the likes of Kilmarnock, it's okay to do those kind of things, and I do sort of admire Goodwin for attempting that sort of thing. Had it been the next week perhaps or against Hearts, would have been a little bit more concerned, but the gamble absolutely paid off. Kennedy was brilliant in centre field.
Yeah, and I suppose with Watkins coming in, there was questions about whether that would see him on the wing, as we've seen, previously, in his time, and maybe Johnny Hayes drop back to left back and Coulson into left centre back, and to allow Ross McCrory to play in midfield. But Watkins picked up that number 10 role in behind Miovski that Vinny's been used to this season, and well, I guess it worked very effectively this weekend.
Yeah, he was brilliant. He often sort of drifting out wide. He didn't look like a man who's barely played any football in recent weeks at all. And you attributed it to probably his training. I think that sort of came across. You could see the way he was celebrating the goals as well. He was absolutely loving being out there. And I think he is sort of that type of character who will just, regardless of the situation, get his head down and keep working and sort of force his way in through training. And he did exactly that. He was a threat at times. Obviously, he's a good ball carrier. Sometimes some lovely touches, despite Bruton's words. And I was impressed. I think he's a player that sometimes I actually forgot about was there. I think I've said that even on the show. Sort of with all the new signings in sort of the forward areas and the wide areas, we kind of sort of dismissed it maybe a little bit. And he's sort of shown he's still here. He's still capable of putting in performances like that. And if he can carry that on throughout the season when needed, I think we could be all right if we've got a player of a calibre of him to come in.
Yeah, it's a good quality player to kind of be relying on off the bench. And again, going back to one of the points Jim Goodwin made in the summer about having that quality off the bench, like for like quality replacing quality. And it kind of makes me think of a tweet that I saw from regular listener to the show, Jonathan Main. His tweet was more in reference to Hayden Coulson and keeping him fit than we've got a player on our hands. But I think you could really apply the same to Marley Watkins as well, a player that certainly last couple of seasons has been unlucky with injury, and certainly question marks around his fitness and whether or not he's more of a bit part player rather than a regular starter. But, he started this game, and, I think you've got him down as coming off just after the hour, but it must have been a very impactful hour that he had on the pitch at the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I came away from the game and when he went off thinking he has had a very good game. And it's good to see, because I think he has been extremely unlucky throughout his whole career, not just his time at Aberdeen. That's obviously very, very well documented. But as you said, if it's quality for quality, and he's the type of caliber player that's coming off the bench or can come in, put in a shift against the likes of Kilmarnock and not look out of place, not look off the mark, having not featured too much, then we're in a pretty good spot. And he's a player I've quite liked. At times he's been used up front when we've absolutely needed it, and he's not quite looked quite at it as much. But I think as an option either out wide or in behind the striker, he's absolutely still more than capable of this level. Yeah,
absolutely. Obviously, the weekend as well saw a return for Derek McInnes to Pittodrie. Ash Taylor as well made his return to the starting 11 as well as Pittodrie. And as Martin discussed in last week's show, he was hoping Jordan Jones would feature. He did. Alan Power and Christian Deutsch, and Kyle Lafferty, who's been in the news for all the wrong reasons, found himself on the bench. What reception, first of all, did both Messrs Taylor and McInnes receive from the Pittodrie crowd at the weekend?
From where I was, McInnes, for context, I'm right beside the fence in Section S in South Stands. And honestly, I didn't notice McInnes getting much acknowledgement sort of either way. So for the most part, my dad said he noticed that he was getting applause from the main stand sort of as he walked down, which to be fair, probably expected. I didn't think it. I think had the game been a bit more closer or a bit more scrappy or things like that, things might have turned sort of on him a little bit more. But I think with time having passed, with the bad end of his spell at Pittodrie, it sort of just seemed kind of weirdly normal. It was sort of weird looking at him over there in the away and opposite dugout, but no one really took too much notice. And I think that probably worked in Aberdeen's favour, because if it turned into something where Kilmarnock could get their backs up about, then perhaps they might have put up more of a game. So I didn't take too much notice, which is a surprise.
Well, it is very surprising. And what about Ash Taylor's reception? Because obviously, for those that maybe still follow his missus on Instagram, will have seen her post about the songs that were being sung from the Red Shed.
Yeah, so that sort of happened more once we were already nice and comfortable, which I think is fair enough because he started the game pretty well. He played 2 unbelievable passes. The type of ones where Ash Taylor does that and you think, oh my God, yeah, he is actually good sometimes. He played 2 fantastic long-range balls and I was going, oh no, this could be bad. Before then, after that, I putting another few straight out the park. And that was before his goal. I think his reception was comical after he'd scored, but once we were comfortable once again. But I mean, of course, he was going to have a say one way or another. But at the same time, I thought it could have been a lot worse for Ash Taylor, given some of the opinions some people hold. He was sort of Marmite, really, wasn't he? My dad was saying he quite liked him at the time at the game on Saturday. But he looks quite impressive at times, certainly. And then also at times throughout the game, you realised, yeah, that's why people thought he was absolute dog meat.
Yeah, exactly. Opening exchanges has been, I suppose, to quote you just there, a bit Marmite from an Aberdeen point of view. We've either been good, but regularly not really started games very well. What was the case on Saturday for those that weren't in attendance like myself?
We did start a little bit better. I thought we started pretty well, actually, and certainly in comparison to some of the other games, without having sort of too many clear-cut chances. And obviously, we started on top. Kilmarnock had a few sort of counter-attacking opportunities as well, but we looked okay, and especially given what was probably a very unusual shape to most of the team. I suppose the benefit of the international break was they probably had a lot of time to work on something like that, knowing skills would be suspended. So I suppose that's probably contributes to the reason about why we started so well in sort of this unusual shape with unusual personnel in the formation. So we actually did start okay for once, and it's certainly encouraging given sort of how inconsistent that sort of aspect of our game, as well as a lot of the rest of our football so far has been this season. So hopefully that's a sort of suggestion that we are actually moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and I suppose when we did, as you say, maybe start, the better of the two sides, it's important, and I think we always say this a lot, that you capitalise on that good start. And we did. Vinny, the man in question, who certainly picked up a lot of critics, I think it's fair to say, after the defeat in Edinburgh against Hibs, and maybe some question marks around his performances in recent weeks in general, that he could maybe offer more to this team. Probably good for his confidence as well to break the deadlock. Finishing really well, people will maybe single out Ash Taylor for the way he defended the cross, a great ball in, but he's got to stop that cross, because if he doesn't, Bojan's got a tap in. I think if I was a Kilmarnock fan tuning into this, I'd probably have question marks around where the rest of the defending was to allow Bazowin so much time. But the composure, I think, for me, just to kind of slot it home, and again, maybe some question marks around the goalkeeping as well, if I was a Kilmarnock fan. But yeah, from a Aberdeen point of view and a Bazowin fan point of view, like I know you are, just great for him personally, and hopefully we'll see him kick on confidence-wise in contributing more in the final third. Absolutely.
He seemed to embody hashtag new haircut, new me, which was great. I think in terms of the Ash Taylor aspect, first of all, he's going one way, running back towards his own goal, kind of has to get something on it. It's just unfortunate for him that it ended up essentially teeing it up perfectly for Bazowin, and if not Bazowin, Watkins right next to him, which I quite enjoy the fact he was so eager to get on the end of the ball as well. But Vinny did absolutely finish well. He took it really well, showed some composure that's maybe lacked at times, sort of too, and certainly seemed to enjoy the celebrations as well. I think it probably meant a lot to him, and hopefully he can sort of use that as a confidence boost and kick on, because I think he is absolutely a player that Aberdeen fans would really love to sort of set the league alight. Just sort of his personality, the way he is on the pitch as well, and he has potential to be really, really exciting. So if he can add sort of more end product like that, then could absolutely be on to a winner.
Yeah, I do like also how you pointed out that Watkins was involved there, because I remember when I did see the goals back from Sky Sports News, I thought it looked like those two were just going to get in each other's way almost, but thankfully Vinny took charge and hammered the ball into the back of the net. And it's always good when we can double our lead fairly quickly after. Bojan getting his first goal of the day through a penalty that some may say is soft, some may say is a stonewaller. For me, there's no question mark, it's a penalty, but maybe it was a bit theatrical in the way Bojan goes down. But, again, I'm not really sure what Hemmings is doing. It's not good from a Kilmarnock point of view, but again, it seems to be this high press in the intensity in that final third that we've developed at Pittodrie this season. Again, maybe a term that I saw Jonathan Mayne use was cannon fodder of the division. That's the sort of intensity we want to see this Aberdeen team play with at home. We want to be getting into teams' faces. Jim Goodwin again pre-season says he wants to turn Pittodrie into that fortress. It's becoming that way. Still not entirely convincing. But if we can do that, we just really need to rectify the away form, and we could really be on to something good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was thinking as you were saying it. Not even in her notes prior. So look at us go. And if we can replicate that sort of thing away from home, I understand it's a lot more difficult when you don't have quite the backing. You have teams are at home, so they're expected to play with a certain impetus and things like that. But certainly in certain games throughout the league, you would expect those kind of things. But the goal did come from that sort of press, that sort of high intensity football that we were playing on the penalty. I think theatrical from Bojan, but he was impeded as well. So it's one of those. It's sort of expected to be given.
And you've got there being an incident, prior from a set piece. Was there much of a shout in that for Bojan?
Around us, it was sort of insinuated that it was very similar to what Hibernian got a penalty and we subsequently received a red card for in the last game. And I haven't seen it back. Pretty similar without Bojan Miovski having the Kilmarnock player in a headlock. So had it been given, probably couldn't. I don't know if Kilmarnock had too many complaints given. I don't know. It sort of comes to that consistency again. They've got to be consistent one way or another, whether it's consistently shit or consistently good. So had it been last week, probably would have been a penalty given, or last game rather. But, I think maybe between the two, there's a Stonewall penalty in there.
Yeah. Well, we got the penalty. We got the second goal. You think you're on easy street. But then you remember we really struggled to defend set pieces this season. And Kilmarnock's top goal scorer is really good at attacking set pieces. And we discussed it with Martin that Ash Taylor would be a threat for Kilmarnock. And it proved to be again, as he got his head on a ball into the box and headed past the stranded Kyle Rose to pull Kilmarnock back into the game. And really, I probably slated Kilmarnock's defending for the first two goals. Ross McCrory and co really don't cover themselves in glory for the way we defend that goal, because from the couple of angles I've seen of the goal, I feel like Taylor was McCrory's man, and McCrory just gets totally lost in the box, and you can't really afford someone like Ash Taylor a free header.
Nope, absolutely not. And I remember Ash Taylor sort of losing his man later on in the second half as well, which thankfully didn't come to anything. But yeah, it's another set piece. It's something that they really need to work on. And defending was apparently the easy part for Jim Goodwin, but it seems to be the other way around. Absolutely. I think once Taylor does get his head on the ball, very good header. Roos has little to no chance with it at all. And, in terms of the set piece goals we've conceded, probably not the softest of them all, thinking of the Celtic one and certainly the one against Motherwell where Slattery was open at the back post. But still, it's just the same problem over and over again. It's really sort of becoming an Achilles heel, which thankfully this time it didn't matter. But those 5 minutes at Pittodrie were absolute chaos, and I was a little bit nervous. I won't lie.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was the mood like after that goal goes in? Because I'm sure 2-0 up at home, you're feeling very comfortable. The fans, again, the club putting out videos from the Red Shed at full time on Saturday, so must be back in the PR good books this week. The atmosphere, I'm sure, was pretty buoyant from Red Shed to RDS. And then there's maybe a little bit of nerves creeping, but thankfully we managed to extend that back to a 2-goal lead just before half time. And I think probably crucial just to get the fans relaxed and get that atmosphere back for the start of the second half.
Absolutely. I think had we gone in at half-time just 2-1 in front, then it's a nervous half-time. It's a nervy 15 minutes, and we don't know how we're going to come out in the second half. But thankfully, we did get that goal. But it made me nervous a little bit. To get the 2 goals for us in such quick succession before leaking another one from a set piece when they've got at least one massive threat. And I really add emphasis on massive there. In Ash Taylor, it wasn't great. Thankfully, we sort of seemed to react okay, or rather Kilmarnock. I mean, they didn't threaten too much. I think they had one shot from range, which after Jaden Richardson gave the ball away very cheaply. Who, by the way, Jaden Richardson and Anthony Stewart, some of their passing, it's just unbelievably shocking. So thank God Jaden Richardson's a good athlete and Anthony Stewart just wins everything in the air. But thankfully that one was saved by Roos. Other than that, there wasn't too many more nervy moments that I thought was maybe going to come, but the goal before halftime certainly settled things quite a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, what a goal it was from the assist to the finish. Let's talk about the assist. First of all, because we talk about Bojan a lot on this podcast and probably will continue to do so. But, I remember after the Celtic game, seeing the comments about Hayden Coulson being always good at getting forward, it's really exciting, and me being very critical of, well, we need to see what he can do defensively. Well, I think we've seen what he can offer to this team defensively, but also we've got a really good attacking fullback on our hands. Now, I was actually going to message Steve today, but one thing and another I totally forgot, because I'm not sure if you're sure or not. Is there an option to recall that Middlesbrough maybe have? And, obviously, again, we're recording this on Monday, seeing that they've now sacked their manager. Just there's something in the back of my mind that is, all Danny Ward-esque, ringing alarm bells that we've got this brilliant player on our hands. And Middlesbrough go, we're struggling this season. We'll have him back. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that until now, Glenn. I think most loans do come with a recall option, certainly when it comes right to January now anyway. And yeah, if they're struggling, they take a look at Hayden Coulson. If he carries on this form going into January, they have every, I can't see why they wouldn't recall, which is really now concerning, because that assist, I think, really highlights exactly what he's capable of. One massive touch to knock it past the Kilmarnock player, who still had a couple of yards on him. He gets on the end of it and then delivers a perfect ball for Bojan Miovski. And now I'm really upset at the possibility, and it's not even a certainty yet. I was like, oh, brilliant. He'll be available for a pre-contract come January the 1st. Get him that contract ASAP. And now I'm a little bit upset. So thanks for that, Glenn.
It's
hopefully
all right.
Things can go okay and we can sign him on that pre-contract. That would be fantastic.
Well, I'm sure when Steve does tune into the episode, he'll give us his usual message and let us know what the situation is. But there was, I think I saw a couple of tweets about, maybe comments about this being an opportunity to put himself in the shop window to remain down south. But, if he's getting consistent game time and performing at a decent level, and I think this is why this season is so crucial to us. And if, I saw Pine Bovril saying if Aberdeen could get their away form sorted, we'd be in a good place this season. Look at what Hearts had last season and what has now transpired this season. That could be the difference in terms of persuading a Hayden Coulson to stay here for another couple of seasons or go back down south. We got criticised for even having this discussion about whether or not we should be offering Hayden a pre-contract a couple of weeks ago. Well, it seems very much in the forefront of people's minds just, a few weeks later that this is on the card. And, we're going to come on to it a bit later, but with the club obviously still actively, looking around in terms of recruitment, we've gone to the Highland League. I would like to think amongst Connor Barron's contract extension, this is something that the club have in the forefront of their minds to at least pose the question to Hayden sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can imagine Jim Goodwin is particularly keen on him. He just seems like the perfect sort of Jim Goodwin player in the way that we're playing right now. And I think the combination with him and Hayes on the left-hand side, the way how they can interchange as well, because Hayden Coulson, very good going forward. Johnny Hayes also capable of filling at left-back. So if one of them goes, the other stays. It seems like a good balance. And I know, Hayes won't be around forever, but right now seems that way. You'd like to think that's certainly one they're looking at. And, if we can go into January sort of competing for that third spot, ideally still in the Scottish Cup as well, with a trip to Hampden on the cards. And then you can pose, look, if we can on the way, if things are going, there's going to be European football. There might be a cup competition this season. There might even be a final. It's surely attractive and something different. He's been down there. He's had a couple loans and things like that. And he's found himself up in Aberdeen, maybe put himself in the shop window. So you'd like to think we're maybe in pole position. And Jim Goodwin certainly seems like a man capable of selling the dream anyway.
Yeah, he is the cheese to the fine wine that is Johnny Hayes this season. Our left side looks superb, certainly going forward, and a lot more comfortable defensively than has been in previous seasons, certainly. Johnny Hayes as well, just continuing to turn back the years, doesn't he?
Absolutely, very enjoyable. I'll mention it now, just since we're talking about him. There was some fighting spirit shown by Johnny Hayes that I really thoroughly enjoyed. I'll just get onto it now. I think apparently that Armstrong, who came on as a substitute for Kilmarnock, kicked him. And Johnny Hayes straight away back in, shoving him. I'm thinking, this is glorious. I love you, Johnny Hayes. You are the greatest ever. And then a minute later, he's on the ball in about 10 yards of space. The nearest player to him is Kilmarnock's Armstrong. And he waves him on, saying, come on then. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough, sort of thing. Before, he did offload the ball. And then Kilmarnock counter-attacking. Johnny Hayes steams in and absolutely branges Armstrong, putting him up in the air. And I just thought, that is beautiful. The fact, he's now 35. He's a mature professional, but he's still got that dog in him. And then Armstrong's got him pinned to the ground. Who comes over? Hayden Coulson steams over to give Armstrong a little bit what for. And credit to Kevin Clancy also. Didn't book either of them, which probably would have been fair enough. Just come on, boys, let's not do this. And he actually had a decent game, Kevin Clancy, which is very much unlike him. And also, I can't remember if this was before or after that incident, Coulson got kicked up in the air by Mr. Power, which, no surprise, he's an absolute jobber. Straight in goes Ross McCrory. They're really willing to stick up for each other in this team, and it seems like there's a great fighting spirit amongst the whole squad. I'm just really enjoying it. I thought I'd mention it now before we did later on, since we were talking about Johnny Hayes.
Yeah, that's really good to hear, and I think that's something that is quite evident in this team, is the togetherness and the kind of fighting spirit, maybe quite literally, in some of these stories. And despite maybe the little bit of Wi-Fi issues that you had at the start of the story, I'm sure that came across really brilliantly, especially the main part. So apologies if there was any interference for those of you. There is a bit of a bad storm. I say bad storm, just some wind and rain, and living in the sticks does tend to affect the Wi-Fi like that. So apologies if that has come through. Hopefully not, and hopefully that apology was just a waste of about 30 seconds of your time listening to it. But Bojan, we'll go back to that third goal. I mean, he's scored some goals this season for us already, varying types of goals, but that's just another one to put in his highlight reel. Just the way he just dinks it into the roof of the net, it's just there's just something special about it.
Oh, so cheeky, just chipping it over the defender there after Hemmings has had an absolute nightmare once again. Not quite sure what he was up to in the first place, going out to try and close down Hayden Coulson, but Bojan, the composure shown was just beautiful, and he absolutely loved it as well. And it just sort of shows like there's another little string to the bow. There was the one where he was through on goal. I can't remember who against, but he tried to chip it over. I think it was Motherwell, and I thought just show a little bit more composure there, and he did it there. It was pretty close in on the goal, but he still had a defender to compete with, and it just looked so cheeky. I absolutely loved it, and I think we're going to need to enjoy Bojan whilst we can. I'm trying not to put too much of Debbie Downer on things, but it was gorgeous, and it added a lot more comfort, I think, for both the players and the way they played the second half, and for us in the stands as well.
Yeah, and I suppose, the second half in these games, when you are comfortable, can kind of peter out, but we did get the fourth goal, and you've said it came at a good time. Was there a bit of pressure maybe Kilmarnock coming back into the game, or was it just in terms of, really killing off the game?
Just in more sort of killing off the game. Killie sort of had fits and sparks mainly when we gave the ball away and they looked to counter-attack. But I can't recall too much of that Kelleroos had to do. But, about 18 minutes or something into the second half, Anthony Stewart grabbing his first. It was good ball into the box and he just strolled in. And of course, he wins a ball in the air that wasn't a set-piece defender in our box and headed home in front of the red shed. But it just sort of eased any tension because you thought, if Killie get a goal, that's when it's still 3-1, and then it's then 3-2 with 10, 15 minutes to go. The nerves will start really coming to the fore with our defence especially. But it just sort of settled everything. He looks like he thoroughly enjoyed it. So and the red shed certainly did.
Yeah, and so did Yilber Ramadani, judging by the video that the club put out this morning as well. And yeah, I'm really chuffed for Anthony Stewart as well, getting on the score sheet, because I can't remember what game it was. I think it was the Livingston game that I called him 50p because he had so many chances to score and he just couldn't, for the life of him, get the ball on target when a couple of occasions it looked easier to score. So, of course, I miss his first goal for the club. But yeah, really, really pleased for him because he has seemed to be a bit of a target from set pieces that we really should be able to utilise more, certainly over the course of the season. So good, I'm sure, for his confidence as well. You've also got in there was a hairy moment for Kelleroos. Jim Goodwin's been singing his praises, speaking about the Dutch national team, but good to see there's maybe still that bit to keep us on the edge of our seats as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can't quite remember who it was that closed him down, a Kilmarnock player, because I don't think they showed it in the highlights, because eventually it did really come to nothing, and we kind of dealt with the mistake quite well, but he basically got closed down when he was on the ball. He was going to clear it and kicked it off the Kilmarnock player. Thankfully, it went wide rather than towards goal, and he managed to sort of get back in position, and whilst the Kilmarnock player just didn't take the shot on for whatever reason. I think Ross McCrory maybe got back and across as well, but it was a little timely reminder that sometimes don't be too clever. Make sure you're focused and aware in your surroundings. But thankfully, it came to nothing. And other than that, Kelleroos had a good game with the ball at his feet after that, despite my nerves because of that. And also, other than their goal, didn't really have too much to do. And with their goal, couldn't do too much about it.
Yeah. And, you've been critical of Jim Goodwin for forgetting that he can use more than 3 substitutes. He did this weekend. Duke, Shaden Morris, Jack Milne did come on this weekend. And Christian Ramirez also came on. Brune did say that the reaction for the American was fairly reasonable. Would you back that up?
Yeah, absolutely. I personally was delighted to see him. He's been back involved past few weeks, and it was good to see him being used. I think if he's here, we'd be as well getting the use of him. And he came on, performed pretty well. It sort of looks like he was in behind Duke in that number 10 role, and he actually looked pretty comfortable. He was getting on the ball, sort of making things happen. And he had a shot from range that was saved. I think he was probably desperate to see that hit the back of the net. But yeah, I think the reception was fairly warm. I remember Easter Road at one point when he was warming up, people were singing his name and he seemed very thankful for that. So, and Jim Goodwin was complimentary of him and his attitude actually in the post-match interview on BBC Radio Scotland as well. So certainly seems to be back and involved and back on social media as well. So hopefully that's the end of that interesting saga.
Yeah, saga is definitely a good word. Yeah, I saw the chance that he had that produced a good save from Hemmings, and I think there was someone else said that had Shaden Morris looked up and pulled the ball back for Ramirez, it would have been a certain goal, although we have seen when it should be a certain goal for Ramirez, he maybe has other ideas. But yeah, I'm delighted to see him, coming back onto the pitch and making an impact, because I totally agree, Callum. Whilst he's here, for however long that's going to be, we do really have to be making the most of that, because it is a good impact player to have. Duke, as usual, seemed to have made a good impact off the bench. Spinning Ash Taylor into the south stand as well was very comical to see. On the other wing, though, Shaden Morris, what did you make of his impact? Because again, he's a player that's, again, don't want to be too critical, given he's still maybe adjusting to life up in Scotland, a new player, new style of football, but he's struggled so far in his time in Aberdeen. What did you make of his performance?
Once again, I'll use the word raw. Showed sort of flashes of his, explosive tendencies, perhaps you could use it, where, he showed his pace, his direct running and things like that. And then sometimes the final ball maybe lacking a little bit and things. I think he is still very young. He'll still have a lot to learn in football, let alone now being up here in Scottish football for quite a short time too. I just hope he does come good, because otherwise, pretty big investment wasted. But, I don't want to write him off.
No, fair enough. And Jack Milne as well. What did you think of him?
So I came on with about 10 minutes to go. Didn't have too much to test him, really. Looked rather comfortable for the most part, and it was just good to see him actually being involved. Worthwhile him actually being there. So hopefully, that sort of 10 minutes, although not much, the experience will help him. And also good for him getting to play in front of Pittodrie crowd in a win as well, when he's come through the youth system. Likewise, Ryan Duncan came on and looked like a good threat on that left hand side, direct with his running, taking on Kilmarnock players. I think he had a attempt or two from sort of outside the area. He looks capable at this level, and the more they are included, sort of the happier I am, really, because I think they will go on to become first team regulars.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's always good to give youth a chance where possible and get them integrated into the team for, whenever the occasion might come about, that we need to rely on them. But all in all, Callum, a really good, convincing home win that sets us up nicely for the weekend. I'm just disappointed that you haven't managed to use how good were we today during that review. But on to bigger and better things, wasn't it, Jack McInnes?
Oh yes. I think the less we say about that, the better. But it's he's had his comeuppance in that regard.
Yeah.
It'll be funny when eventually McInnes gets one over us and he's back being loud on social media. I think fair play, but funny for us for now. I'm disappointed in myself though. That's a very good point, but there's always next time.
I know, because I feel you had that saved in drafts for a long time, although you do have a bit to edit of this episode, so there's maybe a chance that you can get that in the pre-match. We'll see how that transpires. But it was important. We spoke about it before the international break, that we really started the month of October. You called it spooky season. It passed without fright, but we'll be hoping to avoid another scare. October is going to be a long month if you don't like Halloween month, by the way. As we head to Tannadice to take on, it's fair to say, struggling Dundee United, who have yet to win at home this season, yet to pick up any sort of points at home. And in fact, Saturday, Callum, was the first time they'd scored in a league home game. All those stats, of course, do relate to the league before people come and tell me that I'm speaking nonsense. Should we be extremely confident then, Callum, or does our away form still create loads of doubt?
Look, absolutely. On the face of things, we're performing pretty well in the league. Dundee United performing absolutely terrible, struggling at home. Yeah, we absolutely should be confident. But knowing Aberdeen, knowing how we've been in recent times, all those things are still pointing towards us cocking this up, despite the good start to the month. And, giving Dundee United their first home win of the season in the league, all that kind of stuff, they all of a sudden kickstart their season once again. It would be typical. However, hopefully, we will be able to compile the misery. And, we're looking good. We have every reason to be confident. But there's just a small part of me in the back of my mind that's going, it's going to happen. We're going to cock it up. We're going to give them a win. They're going to love it. After we've taken loads of people down there and made a big fuss about getting the red shed, it's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. After they caved in and accepted the strength, the British pound might be struggling, but the red pound is certainly doing well this season for clubs in the Scottish Premiership. And I suppose it probably points to the fact that Dundee United's home form has been so terrible that they did have to cave and accept taking in Aberdeen fans. More Aberdeen fans than they were previously going to let in was the right thing to do. And it looks set to be a 4,000 strong Red Army that invades Dundee this weekend. And yeah, I do have also that niggling doubt. I think the last game at Tannadice, obviously crowded in controversy with the Funso Ojo red card and Harps getting the winner in that game. A game I think that we were pretty confident going into, Calum, but I'm just hoped that the way that we performed this weekend and Dundee United really seem to home is not where the heart is this season. They don't have any home comforts, and hopefully we can continue to create problems for them. But for Jim Goodwin, do you think he has problems of his own based on some of the performances that he saw? Because Leighton Clarkson will be back, able for selection. There's been talk of Connor Barron being fit enough to make the match day squad. Marley Watkins, by all accounts, put in a decent shift on Saturday. I'm not sure, is Liam Scales back available? So you've then got Liam Scales coming back into the team, which will see Ross McCrory move forward back into midfield. That will see probably Matty Kennedy drop out, but problems for Jim in terms of team selection. But these all seem like good problems to have.
Fantastic problems. I mean, I have no idea, especially after this weekend, what team he's going to put out at Tannadice. Absolutely no clue. I mean, you think Scales probably comes back in, but Clarkson and Barron probably not. But even if Scales comes back in, who do you drop out? It'll be an interesting one. But it's a fantastic option to have, because whoever is unfortunate to miss out, you then have as an option off the bench, and with five substitutions to make at Tannadice against a struggling Dundee United team, it's a great position to be in. And it further points to it should all be okay. We've got 3 players, coming back into contention. Still scared though, but hopefully with all that said, we should have enough about us options off the bench if things aren't going well. So
yeah,
all right.
You said at the kind of early parts of the episode that Jim Goodwin knows what he's doing, contrary to maybe the belief that podcasts and football fans have on sometimes. But what do you think Jim Goodwin will do for this weekend in terms of that selection in the middle of the park?
Okay, so I think Scales comes back in at centre back, pushing McCrory into midfield. I think Salwin stays in after his goal. Hayes obviously plays. I think it will be Watkins that probably drops out. Kennedy keeping his place. Man of match performance in centre midfield, but obviously he'll be probably playing further up the park. I think Watkins comes out onto the bench, which is probably, Watkins might feel hard done by there, but at the same time, then you've got him to come off the bench and impact things with half an hour, 20 minutes to go. I think that's probably what we're going to go with. I doubt we'll perhaps start with 2 strikers, bring in Duke away from home again anyway. And I think that's how things are going to go. But as I said, now with Jim Goodwin, I have no idea. It could be total opposite.
Well, I'm going to say that we're going to take Matty Busquets out of the team and keep Marley Watkins. Now, the reasoning behind this is because Marley Watkins can offer a physical presence, a bit more of a target for us to put balls to and Bojan to maybe feed off of. But I'm also thinking this could be quite a physical game. I'm not sure who the referee is, if it's been announced yet, but you've got Callum Butcher, who is more than likely to be booked. You've got Ryan Edwards in there, who also likes a booking as well. If you've got a physical presence in Marley Watkins in there that can maybe attract a booking off one of those 2 players, and then you bring on a Leighton Clarkson, a Matty Kennedy, a Duke, to run at these players, potentially on yellow cards, they're not going to want to throw themselves into tackle against these players that we've already seen this season, more so in Duke, the impact he can have later on in the game. That would maybe ease some of the nerves if the game remains tight. But I suppose maybe given the fragility of United, especially at home this season, Jim Goodwin's maybe thinking, well, if we go for the kill early, and really knock them, a la what Celtic did. I'm not saying we're anywhere near on Celtic's level in terms of going forward, but there's that vulnerability about Dundee United, and maybe it's one that Jim Goodwin would be keen to exploit in the opening exchanges.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he will be very keen to exploit it. I just don't know as really probably of those two options, unless he throws something else out there that we're not expecting. I'm not sure which one he will go with. I'll trust him regardless of what he does, and really is a great problem to have. I suppose with all these players available, and even with those three potentially returning to either starting up or the match day squad as well, and you've still got Callum Roberts to return from injury as well, and things like that to just add even more fuel to the fire.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be interesting though for Dundee United. It's Liam Fox's second permanent game in charge of Dundee United, and obviously the weekend, former Dons Andy Considine and Stevie May combining very well to exploit that Dundee United backline. For him, what do you think the most important thing is going into the weekend? Is it getting some points on the board at home, or I suppose we can't really speak from a Dundee United point of view. Do you think they'll try and be stuffy, almost come out and park the bus and try and frustrate Aberdeen and then hit us on the counter? Or do you think Liam Fox will try and be imposing his own style on things? I
think with the way they're playing right now, confidence clearly lacking. I mean, defensively, they were an absolute shambles against St Johnstone, despite Andy Considine's fantastic assist for Stevie May. If I'm Dundee, I'd be wanting to make it as difficult for us as possible in terms of every second ball we have to be at it. We have to win those 50-50s, turn it into a battle, because sometimes in games we've seen that happen with us and we don't always come out on top on those occasions. And when a team is lacking in confidence, it is hard to then ask them to do certain things, new patches of play, things like that, to try and make things happen. Whilst I'm sure he is also trying to work into that, I think trying to frustrate us when we've got a good backing that could maybe perhaps turn, and then also get their fans involved too. Sort of, you look at the game last season, as I say, when Ojo got sent off for absolutely no reason, that sort of thing kind of happened. It did turn into a bit of a scrap.
And I think as well, with it being a 6 p.m. kickoff, their fans will be up for the game regardless of their recent run of form. Our fans will be more than up for it. I'm sure they'll have been on it for a very long time before kickoff anyway. But it is one of those games that will have a unique atmosphere, I think we'll call it, given the kickoff and the circumstances surrounding the game. Obviously the first time we've been back at Tannadice since that Ojo incident as well. So interesting to kind of see how the game develops, and I think really whoever can get the first kind of really strong footing in the game will get their fans either up or down. But looking at Dundee United, they've not kept a clean sheet at home this season, but then equally we've only kept one away clean sheet. So again, to go back to what Jim says, it probably is about what defence comes out on top, and he said sorting that defence will be easy if we can sort the defence for this weekend with Liam Scales coming back. That could be hugely important into if we can go down there and take the 3 points back up the road.
I think so. I still don't think we will keep a clean sheet down there. Probably more down to outscoring the opposition, which it's tended to be at Pittodrie as well. Because their defensive situation hasn't been great there either. It'll be a tough one, but they have. I do take some comfort in I'll watch the highlights against them against St Johnstone. They're worse defensively than us somehow, which really is quite something. It takes some beating, and I think Liam Fox probably has too big a task in his hand to try and turn that round so quickly, when confidence is clearly very, very low. So hopefully we can take some comfort in that and give us confidence, and if we can put in a decent defensive play, that gives us something to build on, because we know we've got exciting attacking players in this team capable of scoring goals.
Yeah, and hopefully also that Bojan can get his scoring boots on away from home as well. God only knows what the reaction will be in the shed if he scores in front of that end come Saturday as well. She'll be a different sort of PR video that the club will be issuing if it is similar scenes to what we saw when Duke scored in front of the away end up in Dingwall. In terms of the strikers and Aberdeen, we did sign a new striker today. Again, as we said, recording this on Monday. Aaron Reid, who was previously with the Aberdeen academy at a young age, was released and then signed for Montrose, who then released him in the summer and was picked up by Turriff United. But after an impressive start to the season that's seen him score 11 in 12 and 17 in 23 games overall this season, a pretty impressive return for the 18-year-old. The Dons made no mistake in getting him back involved with Aberdeen, and he will officially become an Aberdeen player again on the 1st of January. So we'll continue for the next couple of months, hopefully banging them in for Turriff. I'm sure that's what Dean Donaldson will be hoping for. But impressive returns from young Aaron Calum. But good to see that despite our scouting network going far and wide, that we are still looking locally, because I think of the Highland League and I think of what Ross County do with their loan players, feeding them out to Brora. We saw one of the young players actually that they did loan to Brora last season come on and score the equaliser, I think it was, in that 2-2 home draw at the back end of last season as well. So, it is a good set standard, and I think AFC chat, it's not the be all and end all for all Aberdeen rumours, let's be honest, but there's people on there suggesting last season that we signed Scott Barber from Fraserburgh, given our goal scoring exploits were really struggling. I know Fig was keen for me to downplay that rumours as quickly as possible, but there are talented players within the Highland League, or young and upcoming players making a name for themselves that are in that local area. It's good to see that the club are still keeping an eye on everything, really.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no point ruling anything out. If they're a good player, particularly in Aaron Reid's case, not going to come on here and pretend that I know absolutely anything about him, but clearly highly thought of it. Highland League, it's a pretty decent level. It's not Premiership level, of course it's not. But if you look at what Cove have done coming up from the Highland League, they're now in the Championship. Aaron Reid, 18 years old, and scoring against fully grown, fully developed men who have been playing football 10 years longer than him at that level at such a young age. I like it. I quite like it. And the fact, not only for him, going back to Aberdeen after they'd released him, he's probably coming back with a point to prove. I like that Aberdeen have not just dismissed him once after getting rid of him, clearly kept tabs on him. That's encouraging, because these things do happen. A lot of things happen in that development gap sort of between 14 and 18 that kind of make or break players. And clearly Aaron Reid reacted well as well to having been released and now coming back. So it's very, very encouraging, and he's going to be training at Cormac Park, whether it's the youth development team or in the first team. I'm sure probably a little bit of both between now and joining full time in January. That's encouraging as well. So haven't seen him play. Looks huge, and given all those reasons, I'm still quite excited about it. Just love transfer business.
Yeah, exactly. It's always nice when some transfer business comes out of the blue. But we try and cover as much as we can on the episode. It was just luck that we do always record on a Monday evening, and this was announced on Monday lunchtime, so we could include that in the episode this week. Hopefully, though, when we are back next week, we've got more memorable moments to discuss. Of course, Callum, what was your memorable moment from the weekend's win over Kilmarnock?
Johnny Hayes, Breingen, Armstrong. Absolutely loved it, and it was just sort of peak Johnny Hayes, and it's just nice to see there's life in the old dog yet at 35. I would ask you, do you have one, given you were off gallivanting in London?
Yeah, I wasn't there, but for me, that third goal, just the drive, the cutback, the finish, it's just, I love goals that are so aesthetically pleasing. And for me would be that third goal. Just everything about it from an Aberdeen point of view was really encouraging. So that would be my memorable moment. But I like how we did say it's not necessarily going to be goals. It could be incidents. So I like how you've gone for that as well. But if you have been watching on YouTube, of course, leave us a comment with your memorable moment from the game. What are your thoughts on the team selection going into the weekend's game against Dundee United? If you've been listening, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And maybe if you follow us on social media, whether it be on Instagram at rtg.podcast or on Twitter at rtg_podcast, give us a tweet with your thoughts, give us a post on Instagram. Remember to share the episode with your friends and family and leave us that review as well. We've done it as well. It's easy enough to do, so I'm sure you guys can afford to do it as well. Thank you very much for tuning in. Until next time.
Thoroughly professional. Quickly, one last thing. Prediction. Yeah.
3-0 Aberdeen.
I'm going 3-1. A Scott Vernon-esque hat-trick at Tannadice from Bojan Miovski. Let us know in the comments down below as well what you think. Thank you. Bye-bye.